I got the flow. I'm about to pull up. His wishful kindness. And I've been waiting so long. Now I gotta resurface. Hey, everybody talk stop. All the bread and we burn it. Cause I've been feeling cool time. I've been fucking cool time. We're turning up.
Welcome to another episode of Mitten State Sports Corner. I've got myself a special guest today, one of my fellow beer league hockey players. One of my favorite subs for when if you don't feel like going to hockey. It's the infamous Mike Pfeiffer.
How's everybody doing?
We are going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some upcoming Red Wings hockey, some lineups that have changed a little bit since last season, the preseason, as well as some of our predictions for how the season's going to go. And we'll touch on a few other topics, but it's going to all be Red Wings related. So we're going to hop right into it. Mike, what do you want to start with?
Well, I was taking a look at the first 10 games of the season, and just based off of that, they have a tough start. 7 of the first 10 games are against playoff teams. You got the Rangers twice, the President Trophy winners last year, was the top team. Right. So with all the changes, it's going to be really key in those first 10 games we'll be able to tell if they're going to be competitive or not pretty early.
Yeah, the Red Wings have had this, this interesting wave they've rode for the last couple of years. It seems like they come out hot, they get the fans all kinds of excited, right? And they might come out 4-0 or 5-2. I think I remember last year might have been 5-2, 5-3. They started off really decent, and then, it seems like, of course, an injury bug might hit or something else happens. It's like they run into a wall, and then by the time the All-Star break comes around, it's like they forgot how to play hockey or they play a tough month, and it's just, they got to find a way to get over the hump. And I think that Lalonde can do it. I think he's the coach that can do it. I think if Yzerman picked him, I trust him. I have to. Yzerman hasn't steered us wrong yet. He had kind of a mess to deal with, cap-wise and getting some guys in and out. And, but I think this year really, to me, looks like the year that he's finally got his own roster in there. I really feel like it's guys that he wanted. They're not holdovers, bad contracts that he had to eat up. These it's kind of his guys, and I do expect him to take that leap this year. But, as mentioned, there's 7 out of the first 10 games are against playoff teams or teams that are looking to get into the playoffs. And, they're not going to go down without a fight.
Yeah, for sure. You have the Sabres, which they were right there behind the Wings last year. And 2 years ago, it was the Sabres in Ottawa and the Wings. The Devils took a big step back last year, but I think they picked up another goalie in Markstrom.
Yep.
And, they're looking to bounce back. Their division alone is just really tough. You have your Tampas and Bostons, and Carolina's always good, and you got the Rangers. The Senators are going to be looking to take another jump. So, but I do agree with you, too, on the roster aspect of it. Yzerman went out and he got a couple veteran guys like Perron, but you could tell last season, Perron was starting to lose a step. He's starting to get older. So to go on that, kind of piggyback on that, and bring in a guy like Tarasenko, who is a little bit younger. He's a little bit faster, a little more skilled than Perron was. So I think that's a good pickup for about the same price what they were paying Perron last season. I think Cam Talbot is another big pickup that they had. I think Lyon did a great job. But if you look at his games played, he played 43 games last season.
Too many.
And his most before that was 14 in the year prior.
Yep.
So, and we're both goalies, so we understand. Yeah. You can only imagine at that level.
Well, obviously, the two of us combined are better than Alex Lyon. For sure. You could see that on the ice last year and years prior. There's a reason they keep calling us back.
Yeah.
Obviously, we got to be pretty good. But
it's not the fact that we're just crazy enough to show up and play for anybody. It
has nothing to do with that at all. I think actually it's just based on talent alone. And if there's anything that I can tell you folks, if you guys ever come to a beer league hockey game of ours, Terry will make sure that he gives you a very special treat if you score a hat trick. Now, he claims that has gone away. That's just no longer the case here, folks. I promise you, he's just coming up with something better. So the minute you guys decide to go out and burn us for a hat trick, which is pretty likely, you're going to be surprised what Terry can do for you. Now, getting back to the Red Wings, which is obviously why we're here, the biggest thing that I think I could say from last year is like you said, goaltending. They relied on Husso and Alex Lyon. And Husso, I don't know what his deal is. I don't know what he's really truthfully dealing with. I feel like it's a lot more than they've alluded to. I think that Alex Lyon is a very solid 1B or number 2 goalie, but I don't know that he can carry the load. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. But last year he burned out. And, if he can, like I mentioned this on one of our other shows, if he can go out and give you 30 games, 25, 30 games, I don't think you want to ask much more than that. Talbot will give you 25, 30 if he's healthy, right? So now you're looking at filling, 20 to 25 more games, right? Everybody else, right? And that's letting Husso come back, at his pace, right? And maybe he gives you 10 starts, or maybe they give Casa a chance at some point or whatever. Like, I think that's realistic. But at the end of the day, I mean, they still got to stop letting their goalies get 35 shots a game. I mean, that's not all defense. I mean, they're guys like Perron didn't play defense much anymore, and not a knock on him. He did a few years ago, but he's just getting older and slower. And some of the vets just, again, they're there for moral support. It seems like more than anything, and that's not where the Wings are now.
And that brings me to some more additions that they had. You look up and down their lineup. You have Tarasenko that's going to play in the top six. If Raz can stay healthy, he's a solid defensive player with Kopp. Berger's coming up from the AHL. Is going to be some skill on that third line. He needs to learn how to play a little bit more defense. But they brought in Tyler Mott. That's a great fourth line addition. Really, really good. He was like top 5 in a lot of the defensive stats last year. And then with Fisher coming back and Veleno on that fourth line, your third and fourth line, you have 5 out of those 6 forwards are pretty good defensively. So the other thing that does too is, like, you look at a guy like Dylan Larkin, who plays in all situations. Well, he usually misses anywhere from 8 to 15 games a season, if you average it out. And if you have those forwards that can take some pressure off of him on the penalty kill, hopefully he can stay a little more healthy. And you have your Kopps and Rasmussens and Valenos and Fishers and Motts.
Yep.
They're going to play that penalty kill role.
Yep.
And then you go to the back end with, Seider, we're hoping is going to take another step. Sherratt surprisingly played a little bit better defensively last year, but he was in the second pairing. You got Simon Evanson coming up from the AHL. Everybody's expecting big things. I think long-term what you're hoping for is Edvinsson and Seider are your top pair, and they're just shut down.
Well, and the kid they just drafted, right? From Sweden, Palinka.
Yeah.
That kid looks sharp, and they just signed him to his entry-level deal too. And I think there's a reason for that. I think Yzerman sees that kid's got potential. He plays an offensive game, and he's got that, like, Cal McCarr confidence to him almost. And I don't want to compare him. That's a pretty big comparison. But, they needed some offensively minded defensemen. Seider, to me, was kind of the only one that did that. Wallman would occasionally, but he's hurt, a lot. And, a lot of fans were upset about the Wallman trade. I liked Wallman a lot. I think he was good for us for when we had him. I don't think he was going to be a long-term piece. And I think Yzerman knew that. But he mentioned in his press conference, right? Like, it was very expensive to move guys. And, we gave up that pick. But, again, trust the Yzer plan, right? I think that, Dan Petrie, Jeff Petrie has zero reason being on the ice, in my opinion. Like, I have zero idea why they play this man. Any kid in the AHL to me is going to be better than Petrie. I don't mean to just blast the guy, but my gosh, there was so many examples last year where he cost us the game.
Yeah,
okay?
He's rough for sure.
And it's just, it's time to move on. And whether they keep him around for veteran support or backup, it doesn't matter to me. He does not need to start games. They're at that point where they need some of these kids to come up. They need some of this youth to take over, and that's how you push them into the playoff. And you're going to need cheap contracts, guys that are maybe outperforming their contracts, and you need good depth on your third and fourth lines, and that's not something the Red Wings have had typically. But to your point, I think they've definitely really improved that this year. And again, another growth even from our coach Lalonde. I think last year he even struggled at times with some lineup combinations, or maybe he'd changed things that might have been working, and some things that I didn't even agree with. But overall, I think he did a pretty solid job. But injuries, and we have to keep guys like Larkin healthy, Raymond healthy. Seider amazingly hasn't missed a game yet. Those guys are core guys, but they can't do 30, 35 minutes a game, and you expect them to stay healthy all season. You saw what happened when Larkin got hurt last year. This team was a completely different animal. And they need Tarasenko to drop 20 bombs this year, right? They're going to need, you're going to need your Tyler Motts. You're going to need your Kopp to pitch in. Raymond needs to continue to break out. Like, the end of last year with the way Raymond went off was some of the best Hockeytown seen since, I'd say, like 15 at least. That was absolutely amazing. That team was fired up, and so I hope that he can continue.
Yep. And if you look, you break down some numbers. Larkin, the last 3 seasons, pretty much average a point per game. Raymond, the 3 seasons he's been in the league, he's improved every season. Hopefully he can take that step this year to being a point per game player. Tarasenko, as he's gotten a little bit older, but he's changed his style a little bit. He's not just a sniper now. He'll throw the body a little bit.
Yep.
Same thing with Raymond last year. That's one thing that they talked about is he put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle, and it showed. You'll get a full season of Patrick Kane.
I was just going to say, that the one, forgotten part of this is a full season of Patrick Kane, who is a future Hall of Famer. He averaged almost a point per game last year, right?
Yeah, he was just under a point per game last season coming off that hip surgery.
Which is a major surgery.
Yeah, and what they didn't have was they would bounce Kane up to that first line with Raymond and Larkin last season.
Yeah.
They didn't really have somebody else to go into that spot. I think Raz got a little bit of run. Fabry was up there a little bit.
Fabry's hurt again.
I mean, and you can't tell me Tarasenko isn't an upgrade over those two guys on the first line.
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, much respect to those guys, right? I mean, obviously, but like you said, I mean, Fabry, I loved him when he was in the lineup. That was the problem. His availability was not there. And that's your biggest asset as a pro player, football, hockey, baseball, doesn't matter. Your biggest asset's your availability. And Fabry didn't have that. No. And I don't think it was anything personal, but, I think, honestly, we talked about this on another episode, but, him going to the Ducks is probably the best situation for him. He's going to go there. He's going to get mega minutes because they're a young team. And he may have if he can stay healthy at all, which has been a real tough thing for him, he can stay healthy at all. He's got a chance to produce there, which will really help his career going into his next contract. But
I mean, even if the Ducks decide to try to move him at the deadline to send him to a contender, he could possibly get into a playoff race and, have a chance to make a run at the Cup. Yeah. I mean, the guy came off of, 3 ACL tears?
Yeah, he had a tough run.
It's been rough. But, I think the replacement players that they got, I think are, like you said, no disrespect to the players that they let walk or decided to sign elsewhere, but I think that they're an improvement for our lineup.
Yep.
You can leave Kane and DeBrincat on that second line together, or the 1B line, whatever you want to call it, with Comfer.
Yep.
Comfer is a pretty good defensive-minded center, good at face-offs. We all know that DeBrincat and Kane they can lack a little bit defensively sometimes, but
the chemistry is just unbeatable.
Yeah. I mean, they can get the puck. I saw some passes between the two of them last season that just left my jaw on the floor because they just know where each other are at. So, and then, you might have lost a little bit of scoring depth with Sprong leaving. And like we were talking about Fabry, but I think defensively on that third and fourth line, you can match up with teams' top lines now a little bit better. And it's not just the defense. It's not just the goaltending that stops goals.
No.
It's your entire year. Forwards have to chip in and help out a lot. So I think that they have improved in that aspect of getting some defensive-minded forwards. I mean, you have the power play Perron was a big part of that power play. Yep, Gostisbehere.
He had a hell of a year last year, and I'm glad they didn't pay him that money, to be honest with you. He's great, but he's not worth that deal.
No, and I think you touched on Wallman earlier. I mean, I was a big fan of Wallman, too. Yep. I didn't even really know who he was when we picked him up.
No, turned out to be a great pickup.
But he was a replacement-level player at a certain point with what you're getting. And Gostisbehere, as good as he was offensively and on the power play, defensively, I think that he had some lapses, and he also, I know Sherratt and Petrie and Hall and some of those guys get a lot of the grief, but Gostisbehere was a big part of that too.
Well, and his biggest moment in my eyes as a Red Wing, right, is going to be that last game of the season where he stopped that puck from going out of zone and got it to Raymond. They tie the game, and all of a sudden our hearts get broke after that. But I think that alludes to your point that he definitely played well. I mean, I would say he improved over the last several years, right? Gostisbehere, what he did with us last year. I mean, as far as how he looked. But defensively, there was still some issues there. And, and again, to be a forward, that's different. But when you're a defenseman, you got to play defense. And, and I think when you add in the fact that Petrie's a pylon, you got Gostisbehere out there that had lapses at times. And you got, Sherratt that, he had his struggles at times, right? And then Hole when he felt, again, you add these up cumulatively a little bit here and there, and it all of a sudden becomes a big problem, right? And again, then you got Perron that can't back check, and you've got some guys that are older that, maybe have had some struggles, with speed in the last couple of years. And it all adds up to 35, 40 shots a game on the goalies. And again, that's fine once or twice, but they can't do that to get you to the playoffs. And God forbid you do that in the playoffs. You're not going anywhere.
No, and I mean, the Wings last season, they would get trapped in their own zone. I mean, it would look like a power play when it was 5-on-5, and they can't have that. And that's where winning the puck battles, your zone exits, your zone entries, that kind of stuff, that's going to make a big difference. It's more than just a lot of the casual fans might not notice, but there's a lot of little small details that go into that I think the players they brought in really do help with that. And along with Edvinsson, you've got Albert Johansson coming up. Everything I've heard is, He's a really
Wallander.
good defensively player.
Yeah, Wallander down there too.
You got Wallander, you got Vero.
Yep. What about Lombardi's down there, small guy, but he's something I'm excited. Danielson, I'm most excited about. I mean, that and Casper. I mean, the prospect pool looks good. It really does. I have no doubts that Yzerman can draft. He's proven that in Tampa. He's proven that in Detroit. And again, it was kind of like, the old saying, draining the swamp, right? I mean, that's kind of what he had to do. And there's no disrespect to any of those guys at all. I mean, obviously, they're sometimes you have players on your team that are there for a specific purpose. And sometimes that's just to time you over until your prospects mature, and a lot of those guys filled that role, and they filled it admirably. But at the end of the day, you can do better, and that's what they did. And I think that Yzerman said it best in his press conference there after free agency. Did we add in plus minus and all the analytics? It's probably a wash. But what you're hoping for is better defense. You're hoping for maybe somebody steps up and pots 5 or 10 more goals, and you hope your goalies make a couple more key saves. And cumulatively, it may add up to 4 or 5 wins. But I'm telling you right now, 4 or 5 wins puts them in the playoffs, and it puts them up, at a much higher seed. I mean, again, they tied last season, right, with Washington, and obviously we all know the heartbreaker and Tortorella, whatever, didn't know that situation. I don't believe that at all. I think he knew, and he just, stuck it to us, but that's fine. But, I mean, again, you're looking for cumulative improvement. He didn't go out and sign the All-Stars here. He just didn't, but the prospect pool is so deep. I'm glad he didn't. I think you got to give him a chance. And I said this on one of our other shows that, at some point, if you're not going to give him a chance, why not trade him? Go get your all-star then. If somebody's really excited about your young prospect and they're building, use that asset then. If you're not going to use him, don't lose him for nothing. Like, go out and get yourself your all-star level player and stuff to make your team better if that's the route you're going to take. But to just let him sit there and rot and idle, to me, isn't the right answer.
No, I think that's the big key with Yzerman is the last 2 or 3 off seasons he'll bring in guys. But if you look at their contracts, I mean, they've been pretty short term.
Yes.
At most 2 or 3 years. You look at this year, you got Tarasenko for 2 years, Mott for 1 year. I think Fisher re-signed on a 1-year deal.
Yes.
Veleno got 3 years, but he's still 24 years old.
I can't believe that. He feels like he's 35.
Every time I look at Raz, I forget, like, he's 25 years old.
Right.
And he's been with us for like 5 seasons now.
Yes.
And he's steadily developed.
Yes.
Veleno, too. He doesn't stand out, but he's a really good skater, and his point totals have jumped each season. So he's going to take over that. They signed Kopp to a 5-year deal, which was kind of
rash.
Yep. And it was really unlike Yzerman to do that. And you can look at it now and think maybe it wasn't the greatest signing, but he plays a role. But you have these young guys coming up like the Velenos and the Rasmussens that are going to take over that role in the next couple seasons. And if they go out and they sign a Stamkos for 4 or 5 years until he's 38, 39 years old for $8 million a season, that just hinders your long-term outlook when you have a Casper, a Danielson. Yeah. I love Lombardi. We saw Lombardi play here in Flint.
Yes.
And the steps that he took.
Electric.
Yeah, I really expect him to take a big jump in his second pro season.
Yep.
He kind of did that with the Firebirds. He went from like 57 points to 102.
Well, yeah, and I think, being around pro level, trainers, pro level nutrition regimens and, and just being around the pro game in general is only going to benefit him. Again, he's a small guy. I mean, he's not going to grow 6 inches in the next year and all of a sudden become this big fella. I mean, that's not going to happen. But he can put some muscle on. He can put some mass on, make himself a little tougher to play against without going too far and taking away a big part of his game, which is that shiftiness and that speed. And I think they'll find a way to do that. But again, I mean, that's how, just think of what we just talked about. I mean, you just mentioned, 5 or 6 guys that they're expecting to step into this lineup at some point. And when you go out and sign guys to 7-8 year deals and, you hamstring your salary cap and stuff for years to come. I mean, you're doing yourself an injustice, really. And the way that you have that long-term success is you have a good mix of top players that make decent money, that produce, and then you have your young guys that come in on those low-level, entry-level contracts or short-term deals from free agency at lower AAVs, and they kind of help backfill that production at a cheaper rate. Because, again, you can't go out and sign everybody you want. Obviously, nobody's able to do that for a reason. But I'm really excited about a lot of these kids. I mean, any one of those, in my opinion, could possibly step up this year, given the situation. And we hope we don't run into that injury, level. But, if we do, it's not like the cupboard's bare.
No, not at all. And Danielson pushed it right to the end of training camp last year for a roster spot. And he went out and did what he had to do in the WHL and killed it. He's probably going to push for a spot again this training camp.
Who's he kick out though? If you're going to bring Danielson in, let's take away injuries for a moment. If you say production, who does he kick out?
It's the hard part. I mean,
That's kind of where you're at. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is. And the good thing with those guys is they're on their entry-level deals, so I believe they're still waiver exempt. So if you have to make that move, they can go back and forth a couple times. So you don't have to kick anybody out. He's really going to have to – any of those young guys are really going to have to blow the doors off of training camp preseason to get onto the roster because of the depth.
Or a big injury, one or the other.
Yep. And the Wings, they like to carry 8D, and That's think they're probably going to carry 3 goalies again because, I mean, they had 2 last year, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
I think at some point you might get a glimpse of Kosa this year.
Yeah, what do you think about that situation? I mean, obviously being a goalie yourself, right, and myself, I've always believed in having a strong 1 and a solid 1B. And any of the 3 that I think we got now are good 1Bs. None of them to me are 1As.
No, Talbot maybe earlier in his career was more of that 1A, but I mean, he's 37 years old now, so you just want a steady presence there. But we were talking about the prospects. And if you look at even the goaltending prospects, the Wings have not had great goaltending prospects for a long time.
No.
And if you look down the list, I mean, you have Kosa, obviously.
Augustine.
Yep, Augustine looked amazing. Yep, he's a Spartan. He can play goal. He can stop the puck. I think they get Gielander is a solid prospect.
Yeah.
He's 22, 23 years old, and he's improved every step of the way.
Yes.
And they picked up the kid in the Fabry deal from Anaheim, Gage Alexander, I believe.
Yeah.
I think he's a solid prospect that should be in Toledo this year.
Well, yeah, and then you add that in with what you have, right? And I think you're okay. And Talbot's going to move on. Husso's likely going to move on. It's last year Husso's deal. I don't see them bringing him back unless he goes and, like you said, blows the doors off the game this year, which I don't see happen. I don't even think he starts this year, to be honest. I think he's going to be your spot fill guy. But it is nice to see some goalies in the pipeline, and they've taken some swings over the years. Holland was terrible at drafting goalies. I mean, granted, we didn't have high position, but like the evaluation for that department was low. It's been low in Edmonton. I mean, he hasn't been able to figure it out there either. And, again, Holland did many, many, many good things for the Red Wings over the years. Pre-salary cap.
Yeah.
The game's different now.
Yep,
and I'm just here to tell you, and that's not a knock on Kenny. Again, if I saw him today, I'd absolutely shake his hand and thank him for everything he did. There's no doubt about it. However, the game's changed a lot, and you need to have a couple of goalies, and you got to have a couple of solid goalies, and the Red Wings have lacked that. But I think, again, just improving the team around them will make the current goalies look a hell of a lot better.
And this episode is going to be brought to you by our wonderful sponsors. First one going to be Marco and Marissa Mercino at M&M4 Properties. Thank you for your support.
And we're also going to shout out Crystal Fieldhouse, our home for our beer league Sundays. Check them out for open skate adult leagues, stick and puck, figure skating. You can schedule a birthday party out there. Go see our smiling faces on some banners in both rinks this year.
And lastly, thank you to FiberLink Incorporated. Thank you, Tina, Chad, Joel, Debbie, and all of you. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it, and promise we won't forget it.
Yep. Thank you all for your support.
Ooh, got that off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, they're going to probably start carrying 3 goalies, and they're going to rotate them, see who takes the reins, kind of like, I mean, that's what Lyon did last year. He finally took the reins and won the starting job, and thankfully he did, because if he wouldn't have, I don't think we would have even sniffed the playoffs last season. Yeah. So between the 3 of them and the additions on the team, I definitely think that, I mean, I'm predicting they're going to be in the playoffs. I think they're going to get to 95, 96 points.
Glad you brought that up.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about it. Who are your playoff teams from the Eastern Conference this season?
Eastern Conference, so the Rangers will make it again. I believe Carolina will make it again.
Okay.
Florida will drop a little bit in total points, but I think they're going to make it. I have the Wings in there. Not in this order. Just I have the Wings in there. I believe that Buffalo and the New Jersey Devils are going to make a push, and I think they're going to make it.
Okay. So no Boston?
Boston will be there.
Okay.
They're going to drop a little bit. They're getting older. 2 teams that made the playoffs last year that I don't think will make it
Washington
are Washington, and I don't know if Tampa's going to make it this year. They're
on that downswing now.
Yep, they're getting older. They lost Sam Coase. They lost quite a few good role players too
over the years. Yeah.
Yep.
Palat left. I mean, hell, they had Palat and Killorn and Ty Johnson, and they had obviously Stammer going out there, and now, Hedman's older now. And
They traded
Vasilevsky.
Sergachev.
I cannot believe that. You don't trade defensemen like him. I mean, he's been great, and granted, he was hurt, but geez, and Breezeball, again, he's won a couple cups. I'm not taking anything away from the guy, but it does feel like, I agree with you. I do feel like they're on the downswing. Boston, to me, is a fringe playoff team only because they're older. I don't question talent. They get hot, they're in. I mean, that's just a fact. They're a couple years away from going, yeah, they're not making it. It's a tough conference. I mean, any one of these teams could make it in. I mean, Buffalo and Ottawa, I don't know if Ottawa makes it this year, in my opinion. I think they're still at least a year away. To me, there's way too much going on that it's in the background that's screwing that team up. I don't think talent's screwing that team up at all. I really think it's the way the organization's run.
I agree on Ottawa on that one. They were really, really close 2 years ago, and then kind of fell flat on their face this year. But I mean, he might not be Matthew Tkachuk, but Brady Tkachuk is a pretty good player.
He's not terrible.
Pretty good leader. He kind of plays that Brad Marchand role, just getting under your skin.
Oh, God,
but he can score too.
But his dad was no different. Keith was a nasty man.
Yes, he was. And love him or hate him, I mean, they're the kind of player that you hate when they're not on your team, but everybody says that if they were on your team, you'd be their biggest fan.
110%.
And I could see that 100%. But with Buffalo, I mean, they just have a ton of talent with Tage Thompson. And who's their young goalie they have? Levi?
Luka, whatever you have to say his name. Yeah. He played good. Was it Pelkinen or whatever they call him? Is that his last name?
They got another young kid like Levi or something is his last name.
I guess I got to tell you, I don't know.
He bounced around back and forth from the NHL and the AHL last year. But
I think Comrie last year too that played some games for him, but he's an average goalie at best.
Yep. And did Ottawa pick up Ullmark? Is that who traded for Ullmark?
Yeah, I do believe so, which is an interesting pickup for them. I mean,
Boston had to do something to clear some of that cap, and that's the thing with Boston
but you gave up. I mean, you gave up contract security, and I think Swayman's a younger, better goalie, but Swayman's going to want a big fat deal, and it's one of those things that all teams go through at some point. As your team comes on the downswing, who are you going to continue to pay?
Yep.
You're going to pay an all-star goaltender to backstop a team that may not be great. Is that the best way to use your resources? Maybe. I'm not a GM. I'm an armchair GM.
Yep, for sure.
So I have zero talent in this department. I don't know. I'd have to look at everything, I guess. But, I think that it was an interesting decision on it. And also on Ottawa's end. I mean, that tells me that they think they're ready to win now. And again, I don't discredit that talent-wise. To me, there's just something. There's something missing from that organization that they used to have. I mean, when you had the days of Dan Alfredson, right, and you had Osa, right, mm-hmm. and you had even back to, Lexi Ashen on the team, and you had all these guys, and, and over the years, I mean, Ottawa was a formidable foe for many, many, many seasons, and something changed.
Yeah.
Something changed.
Isn't that where Chara started his career?
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. I mean, you had Carlson. Eric Carlson was there for a long time, and, and something happened, right? I mean, that's where Sherratt started. I mean, Sherratt was from Ottawa. I mean, they've continued to draft decently. That's never really been their problem, in my opinion. It's interesting to me that they haven't been able to get over the hump since. And you could say the same for the Red Wings fans, as proud as we are. But I think we know why we struggled. We were completely top heavy, and you needed to reset, and that takes about 5 years to wipe that out. And then Holland signed bad deals after that, so it basically reset that process. So, I mean, again, it's going to be a tough draw. The West is to me, the East is stronger, in my opinion. I think the West has got a couple of top teams. Obviously with Edmonton, is up there. And Seattle's going to sneak in this year. I know they will. Matty Beniers, obviously, they signed today, I believe, to that 7-year extension. Had a slight down year, but I'm a big fan of him from his days at Michigan, obviously. And I do think Seattle's going to sneak in this year. Oh, but teams like L.A., maybe. Well, San Jose's not doing anything. Anaheim's probably not. Most likely. Maybe. So there's possibilities there, but I think the East is a stronger conference, which doesn't bode well for the Red Wings. But I always say iron sharpens iron. You know what I mean? If you want to know if you're going to hang in the playoffs, you don't go out and play weak teams and then expect to win against good teams. Might as well find out now.
Yep. And playoff hockey, we know. I mean, playoff hockey is physical. It's tight. There's not a ton of room. You're not getting the long stretch passes as often. I mean, everybody plays more physical, full body game. And I think just playing the regular season against all those teams in the East that we talked about, I mean, from top to bottom, there's maybe 2 or 3 teams in the East that you'd probably rule out just because they're in full rebuild mode.
Yeah.
I mean, Columbus, Montreal, those are the bottom teams that are still rebuilding. But
St. Louis is doing a good job in Montreal. I will give him props on that.
Yeah, he is.
In the upswing.
Sure. But I mean, in the NHL, it's I mean,
Minnesota's not making the playoffs.
There's so much parity in the NHL. So many teams are, I mean, the players are so good at that level that they can, I mean, you'll see teams come from the bottom and jump up 3, 4, 5 spots or make a push for the playoffs. Just as fast as you see teams fall off, you see teams
happened to us last year. I mean,
Yeah.
Washington came out of nowhere last year, right? I mean, I think we were 10 points up in late February. Team was playing great. They hit an absolute wall in March. I think they won
missed
2
7 games.
They won like 2 games in March. I mean, it was absolutely detrimental, and Washington unfortunately played their best hockey. You know, Pittsburgh's got Crosby. You can't ever count him out. I'm not a fan of Crosby, but you can't ever count him out. You know, they've got Letang still. They've got, Malkin still. But those guys are older. They're on that downswing too. I think Washington, Ovi's going for the goal record, and I think he's done. I think they're pushing to get him that, and that'll be the end of that. But I think they've got a hell of a chance here to make the playoffs, and they need to. I mean, I really think that this year, if they don't make the playoffs, Yzerman might be on the hot seat just from the sheer fact that, fans at some point, no matter how much nostalgia you bring to the franchise, are going to want some results. And I'm going to be one of them at some point here. I mean, I tend to give him a little more leeway just because, knowing the situation that he had. But it's a results-driven business, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to win games. You got to get to the playoffs. You get to the playoffs, and I think it buys them 2 years. I really do. But you got to something's got to change. You got to get in. You got to find a way to get in.
Yep, and you can, in Detroit sports history, you can go back to when Joe Dumars came back to be the GM of the Pistons, and he built a championship team, and they were constantly in the Eastern Conference Finals for 6 years in a row. But when the wheels came off,
They came off.
And the fans, everybody loved him, and then the results weren't there, and he was gone. And I don't think it could happen as fast with Yzerman. I mean, Yzerman, he's the captain.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows what he meant to it, to the organization. But I think fans and even the media start to question it then of, hey, we have taken a step every season under him.
Absolutely.
But now it's time to make that final push, get into the playoffs. And I don't think if they get in, even if they get in as an 8 seed, I don't think they're going to be an easy out for anybody.
No, I don't expect them to be at all. I mean, I think they're too talented, and Yzerman's, something happens in the playoffs. All teams that make the playoffs, your season resets. Everything that happened prior to that means absolutely nothing now, right? And how many times have we seen Cinderella runs in pro sports, college sports, where teams absolutely go on a freaking tear and find a way to stun the world? I mean, the Red Wings could do that easily, just as any other team could. Do I think that happens this year? Honestly, I don't. I think they get to the playoffs, like you said. I think they get there, surprise some people, show them that they're serious, and then next year is the year that they make the run. I'm happy to see it this year by any stretch, but I think that ultimately just progress. I mean, we need to get in. I mean, that's the check mark, like you said, and hopefully they can do something with it. And these guys need a taste of playoff hockey. They just do. I mean, Larkin has never played in the playoffs.
Yeah,
never once. I mean, look, Yzerman has been to the playoffs many times with Tampa. He hasn't done it with the Red Wings yet, obviously, aside from as a player. So I think it's time. I think it's time to give these guys a little bit back as well for what they've given to us, and I'm hoping that that happens this year.
Yeah, like we said, I think they will. They had bad slump last year when Larkin went down. I mean, they were on pace close to 100 points before that happened, and they weren't going to be an 8 seed. They were going to be up there. They're battling for that number 3 spot in their division for most of the season. So I do think that this year is the year that they do get over the hump. They make it into the playoffs. Like you said, they give whoever they're playing a battle. If not, maybe they can win a series. Do I think they're going to on a deep run? I agree with you on that one. I don't think that's this year. But I do think that we will see the same progression. I trust in Yzerman.
Yes.
I've seen what he did in Tampa Bay. I just trust it.
Well, and I see you've got some notes here, right? So this chicken scratch that I have to try to decipher, it's pretty impressive, right? So we've got Raymond, Larkin, Tarasenko, right? It's just the 3 mentioned here. And so last season, right? So 79 games played for Raymond, 23 goals, 34 assists. It feels like all 23 goals were in the last week of the season, it feels like, because, he was on an absolute freaking tear. But, 17 power play goals, or, 14.5% shooting. That's right where you want him to be. Actions this year, 78 points, a 20-point jump. Not unrealistic if he continues to grow like he has. He goes into a big, slump again. Might be a little over, but staying healthy is obviously key there. But breaking that 30-goal mark's big. You got Larkin, so he played 73 games last year. You're expecting 75 this year. That's probably about right. 75 points. I mean, that's not unrealistic. He's been a point-per-game player his entire life.
Real quick, those numbers that you're reading right now, those are the last 3-year averages.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's even better. So, all right, so that's even better. So, Tarasenko, 73 games played on average, averaging 62 points a game. I'm sorry, points per season, excuse me. And, that's solid production. I mean, that's more than Perron and Fabry, have been able to find a way to produce. And so, I'll take that alone. Scheme is going to make a difference here. How do you use them? Are they power play? Are they even strength? Are they both? Obviously, injuries, all of that. But I think they've got a strong team. On paper, this is a pretty strong team compared to some other teams in the league, but it's just a matter of fit. And that's sometimes the big mystery. Honestly, I expect more from Cat this year. I think that, he played well. The defensive lapse you mentioned, but he had 2 big stretches last year where he didn't do anything. I think they were like 10 or 15 games went without a goal twice.
Yep.
And that can't happen. You're getting paid big money. I'm sorry, but if you're not scoring, you better be putting apples up there and helping everybody else score because you're getting paid the big bucks. I have always said that players that go to new teams with big deals, they never produce in the first year. They just don't. They may go out and be okay. They don't produce like you want them to. It's that second and third year typically that guys go out and dominate if they play up to their potential. So I'm hoping that's what happens this year. I really am. But overall, I think it's just a matter of, again, guys playing another full year together. Having a full year at Kane's humongous, I think, as long as, again, he can stay healthy. This team top to bottom is significantly better than they were before, and I can't wait to see them on the ice.
Me either. And like you said, having Kane for a full season, DeBrincat had a solid first year with us, but it was his, third team in 3 seasons. So I think being back home, there's a lot going on with that. Kane missed. He didn't come until, November. You got those 2 back together.
Right.
I think that's definitely going to bode well for the Wings. It just, that second-line center, is Comfer really a second-line center? I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think he fits in there with what we have right now. I think he's more that third-line center checking player. But until one of these kids comes up and kind of fills that role, he'll fill it. He just has to play with Kane and DeBrincat and make it work. I think they can. You saw it last year at times. The biggest thing is just staying healthy. If we can get everybody to play the majority of the games, 68 to 75 games pretty much from everybody up front, I think it's going to be a really successful season. Like we talked about, I think they're going to get into the playoffs, put some pressure on people. And you're going to get your players that continue to improve, too, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Raz is 25. Eleno's 24. Raymond's still only 22, 23 years old. Sider's 23 years old. Vincent's 21. Johansson's 23. It's crazy the amount of veterans that it seems like they have, but they're still young. They have a lot. Dylan Larkin's going into his 10th season.
Unbelievable.
In the NHL, and he's 28 years old.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. DeBrincat, I think, is probably in his 7th or 8th season, and he's, I think, 27. So I'm excited to get the preseason going coming September 25th, and October 10th will be here before we know it. And I'm just ready for Red Wing hockey. Hockey, everybody's excited for football season, but I'm a big hockey nerd.
Yeah.
You know that. So it'll be fun to see the season get rolling, get into the preseason, see what we have. And ultimately, hopefully some of the young guys force their way into the lineup this year, and we get to see best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Competitive, winning hockey, and some of the young guys that we're waiting on. Just said that I'm a hockey nerd. I could have went on probably with another 15, 20 prospects that we have that aren't even, in college or over in Sweden or overseas, wherever they're at. So the pipeline is looking really good.
Yep.
I trust the Yzer plan.
Me too.
I hope everybody else. I know he said patience when he took over, but he has steadily improved this roster and this team. Win totals, point totals, they're getting closer, and I think they're going to have a breakthrough in the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Well, I don't think you have any reason to doubt him at this point. I think he's proven again that he's got some legitimate decision-making skills there, and again, as the captain of the hockey team that we had in general, I think he did more than fine in that department as well. So I have no reason to doubt him. I'll wrap this up with a couple things for you. So First thing I want to ask, right? In the event that Red Wings make the playoffs, the Lions make the playoffs, Pistons aren't making the playoffs, Tigers are not making the playoffs. Which team, non-biased, are you most excited about between the two?
I mean, honestly, I'd be crazy if I didn't say the Lions. It's got to be the Lions.
I agree.
I think if the Lions were to win a Super Bowl or to get to the Super Bowl,
This state might
this
explode.
entire state would explode.
It
Not
would,
just
yeah.
the city. It'd be the entire state.
Agreed.
I mean, we grew up in the golden era of the Red Wings, in my opinion, in the mid-'90s through the 2000s, all the way up until the playoff run stopped pretty much. So we were a little spoiled. It's been hard not having playoff hockey, but the Lions, it would absolutely
Blow the top off the state.
It would be absolutely insane.
Oh, I don't remember how many games we play in our beer league season, Mike. I think it's 24. Let's go with 24. What is your prediction for beer league hockey record this season?
For BJ's?
For BJ?
For Wednesday night,
Just
BJ
Wednesday
dancing sandwiches.
Mind you, this is the Russ-led. He is definitely, one of the best hockey moms that rink has. There's no doubt about it. I mean, this man supplies pretzels and Sam's Club Gatorade. I mean, there is not many things that I can think of that gets me more amped up for a game than Looper's bad jokes, Terry's hat trick promises, Russ's pretzels and great value, Gatorades, and Jordan Peak's Uno.
The Uno Jordan Peak.
The old Uno. I mean, the old Onceler. You know what I mean?
All right, prediction for BJ's dancing sandwiches on Wednesday nights. One, I think Brett is going to have a goals against average under 5. I just think
I don't know.
Happen.
It's going to be a tough one.
I'm going to try and play some stellar defense for you. So, I think BJ's could end up right around 500 this season.
That's impressive.
I think we're going to take a jump. I don't know what you guys were last year. I missed last
Terrible.
season, but we're gonna make a jump this year.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I tell you what, it's one of the most fun teams I've ever played on.
Great group of
great
guys.
Locker room of guys. I question them at times of what the hell side of the fence they're on. But it's always a good time, and you've always got Jay out there to back you up or himself up or stir it up or whatever he feels like doing at that moment. Terry finds a way to trip over the blue line. You got Mike grabbing the wrong sided stick. Russ is, he does, again, we've talked about it. Great job at being team mom. I've got a stellar support of backup goaltenders ready to go at any given time.
We have quite a few backup goaltenders.
I think we have 7 goalies. I think we've got Nick,
I think
and we've got yourself, and we've got, it's incredible, so the pressure still feels like it's on me sometimes, even though we have 7 options. That's okay, though. I kind of like it. But I think, we can find a way to possibly go 14-10 this year. I'm going to go, if it's 24 games, I'm going to go 14-10. We're going to steal some games.
There we go.
We're going to lose some games. But we need somebody to score some goals. For God's sakes, I think we averaged a goal a game last year, and we gave up like 5.
I'm going to do my best to help you out on that one. I wanted one more shout out to the locker room crew. Nothing like the cupcakes and the pudding shots that we get from old Casey.
Thank you, Casey.
And his wife. They're always top notch.
Yes.
Love them.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's, there's so many good things to say about, the locker room atmosphere that we've got. Doesn't always translate to the ice, but we have a lot of fun doing it. Sorry, as a goalie, I'm a tad bit of a psycho. It happens. I don't think you can be a normal person and play goalie at all. So, actually, I don't apologize anymore. I take that back. I'm not even going to apologize anymore.
It's never your fault.
You get. You get what you get. If you don't want me there, that's fine. You just tell me. I'll just sit and watch. It's fine. I enjoy being around it.
We can always tell what Brett is on the ice that night if he gets scored on and the reaction on that first goal.
That's true.
Know,
that's a
we
good
know what Brett is there, what one we're going to get, if we're going to get yelled at, if he's going to come over to the bench in between periods,
I might do that
and joke with us, or if we're going to see a broken stick. I don't think I've ever seen a beer league goalie break as many sticks as you.
Not a chance.
I would never do it because those things are way too expensive.
$100 a pop, and I think I counted last year. I went through 12 sticks last season. But again, you got to think it's not just Wednesday nights. I play Sundays. I subbed on Thursdays a lot. there's a lot of times to break some lumber out there.
That is true. That is true.
I need to calm it down a tad. It gets a little expensive. I mean, going $1,000 in goalie 6 is ridiculous. I mean, for God's sakes, for a guy that doesn't pay, I think that's a little atrocious. But
well, you have to pay something.
Yeah, I guess that's my contribution to the team is throwing freaking sticks on the post.
It's entertainment for us sometimes.
But I'll try to make sure that I keep my spirits up at least through the first 5 games. After that, all bets are off. We'll see how it goes, but taking the summer off might have helped, I think, kind of reset.
What if we come out on a heater, start 5-0?
Man, I don't know. You might get angry, Brett, in like Game 7 then. But I think, a lot of it, I'm way too hard on myself in beer league hockey, but unfortunately, and that's just the nature of who I am. But, man, I tell you, I think back in 10 years ago, I could have made that save. I haven't made that save in 10 years, right? But I'm thinking I should still, and it drives me bonkers. And other times I'm like, well, why the hell didn't he take the puck from him? I mean, he just watched him go by. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. We might score a goal this game. We might not, but it's all for fun. And again, I enjoy the hell out of playing with all you guys and, looking forward to another very interesting season. Also, I don't know if you know, our banner is going to be up in both rinks this year.
Oh, I did not know.
Yeah, our podcast will be up in both rinks this year. So we're hoping to see some love there. Thanks again, Crystal Fieldhouse, for sponsoring us and, the old home away from home, I feel like. FiberLink, as always, thanks for sponsoring us. M&M4 Properties, Marco Mercino, thank you very much. Appreciate you sponsoring us as well. Always nice to talk to Marco, that's for sure.
Marco's a great guy.
He's a great guy,
Awesome.
And I love when he yells at himself on the ice. It's almost twice as good as when I yell at you guys. And that's just out of habit. But when Marco yells at himself, he does it while back-checking. Like he's almost yelling at himself like, damn it, feet, move quicker. Oh, my God, I missed it. And it's like, it's almost comical to listen because you can hear him coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
Like he ain't moving quick, but you can hear him.
Well, usually it's when you realize that he should have turned around and started skating about 3 seconds earlier.
I don't know if he can sometimes, though. Sometimes you worry about the stability of that man, but I love him to death, like I said. I mean, I'm just giving him crap. But sometimes I wonder if, what's going on out there?
Hey, he's going 100 miles an hour.
Absolutely.
Not 100 miles an hour, but he's trying to go 100 miles an hour.
Well, I mean, I think the effort's there for sure.
100%.
No doubt about it. We absolutely love having them. And, I think I got 3 Santa hats last year, which is game MVP. I got 3 Santa hats last year. I also did not get 1 loser medal either. I did not get the loser medal one time and absolutely deserved it. I think you guys were too scared of the repercussions. I really think that's what you thought. Maybe it wasn't a stick next. Maybe it was somebody's neck or something, which I would never go quite that far. But I felt like that was a pretty big accomplishment. I said, son of a gun, I didn't win a loser's medal. That's kind of impressive.
You got to look at the positive side of it.
I guess you have to.
Positive side of everything. There's always a positive.
That's right. So, again, thanks for joining me, Mike. Appreciate you coming out. I'm sure we'll do this again soon. Can't wait to get some of the other fellows from Wednesday involved. I'm not sure if that'll actually be able to be aired or not. It really depends on who shows up, I guess. But
yeah, you might have to, blur some things out or
maybe just no video.
No video is probably the best way to go with that.
Yeah, one. So I'm just not sure who's going to be missing their towel that day or what. I mean, it's going to be weird. So, other than that, again, thanks for joining us again on another episode. Again, thanks for Mike for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys later.